Here we're going to talk about concussion. We're mostly going to talk about what it is. I am going to mention the 6 types, but for more information on that, go to the video that is on specifically on that, and we'll show you a little bit more there. I'm also not going to talk too much about concussion in older adults, maybe not at all, because there's another video on that as well. This is a great video from the CDC that talks about concussion. It says that concussion is a bump, blow, or jolt to the head or body that results in changes. And what they're showing you here is that when the brain hits, regardless of what angle it hits on, the opposite side of the brain is also impacted because the brain is thrown around in the skull. It also talks about the fact that concussion is a functional injury versus a structural injury, and that means that there's the chemicals, what's in the cells comes out, and what's out goes in, and it's a problem with calcium and potassium, and that there's no real structural injury. However, there's new information that says that is true, that concussion is very much a functional injury, and this change in the chemicals, this chemical cascade in the brain, is what's responsible for producing the changes. However, there very recent research that just came out at the time of this recording in October of 2019 in Brain showed that there are microbleeds. They're real little, and they came out on MRI. So stay tuned, because we are just learning more and more about concussion daily. My guess is that we won't be using the MRI so much to be, that'll be more experimental. We'll probably look more at the symptoms like we do now. These symptoms and changes won't show up on CT, on a CAT scan, because it is this functional chemical type of injury. And so they just use the CAT scan or the CT to rule out a more significant injury or a skull fracture, things like that. So we're probably going to continue to do that, would be my guess. However, there is some really interesting studies being done on saliva and being able to detect through what they see, whether it's going to be prolonged symptoms and which symptoms are likely to be seen. So that's really exciting, and that's probably where we would go next in diagnosis. And so here are some common symptoms. There are more of them. You can see our signs and symptoms tools for more information. And in the cognitive domain and communication, we see things like feeling dazed or being in a fog, word finding problems, which is probably due to attentional issues more than anything, slowed information processing. That means that I might be slow to take in information, but I'm also slower to process my own thoughts and get my ideas out. Emotional behavioral realm, we see things like irritability, quick to anger, decreased motivation, and someone crying easily. So this is typically someone who wouldn't necessarily cry easily, like let's say a hardened teenager who doesn't want to be crying, and they are. So we're looking for things like that. You could see it in somebody else who, like a younger child who does cry, but we're looking for that change. In the physical realm, we see lots of headaches and changes in vision, sleep disturbance is a hallmark, fatigue, balance, dizziness issues, and sensitivity to light and sound. Those are very, very common symptoms that we see. A word about symptoms in the younger child. Even if you're here to look at this video for a different population, a different age, we put it in here because you may know somebody who is younger, who had maybe a child or a grandchild or someone that you know who may have an injury or have an injury at some time in the future. And so the symptoms are the same. This is fairly new research also that says that we need to look for those symptoms in a different way. So we need to look for things like appetite changes. We need to look for behavioral dysregulation and decreased engagement. And just a word on those, what they see initially is decreased engagement. There's a pulling back. There's kind of a quietness about the child. And after a while, as they begin to heal, we often see a behavioral dysregulation. So initially, there's probably some excitement because it looks like the child is getting back to normal, but then it kind of goes beyond what's normal, and maybe they're getting up and they're running around their preschool classroom, or they're hitting other children, pushing them, things that they didn't do before, can't sit still. So we're looking for those things. We're looking for disrupted sleep. Continence issue. This is a crowd that tends to have continence issues, but we're looking for a change in that. Maybe they were making it through the night and they're not anymore. Increased dependence on somebody, and stomach aches are things that we can look for. Now, these are also symptoms that make intuitive sense. I have not seen any research yet, but it makes intuitive sense that we can also look for these issues in someone who does not use words to communicate, who may be older. So somebody maybe who has a developmental disability, or has had something happen so that they cannot speak. So they can't tell us what their problem is. We're going to be looking for things like this. Until we know more, that just makes intuitive sense. So we might look for things like touching and holding their head, being bothered by light or noise, forgetting routines, changes in walking, rolling, grasping, feeding, potty training, anything that they used to do before. We're looking for a change in that. Being more clingy, emotional, or withdrawn, change in appetite or sleep, more tantrums, more disruptive, more stomach issues. So this is, like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 6 types of concussion. There are 6 different types that research has now identified. And so we're not thinking of it in the same way that we used to before, whereas concussion was kind of a unitary thing. Now we're looking for symptoms to be presenting in one or more of these tracks after a week. During that first week, they tend to be generalized, but more on that in the concussion video. And then the other really exciting new research is that there are active evidence-based treatments that help with each one of these. And you'll see that exercise appears in all of them. And in some cases, it's referring to specific exercises for that thing, that issue. However, exercise in general, safe exercise, like on a stationary bike initially or a treadmill initially, is being shown to improve outcome earlier. We're seeing earlier change. And that's really exciting, that exercise alone. They don't know exactly why just yet. It could be that more oxygen is going to the brain, and that has a healing effect. So interesting information there. And that means that what we need to be doing is referring and getting people treatment. There are a number of ways to go about this. It depends on who the person is, what the symptoms are. So a specialized concussion treatment center, if they are involved in a sport and need to get back to that, or need to get back to something very, very quickly, most symptoms are going to go away within the first 4 weeks. So if you can wait it out, they may clear within days, a week, 2 weeks, but most people say their symptoms clear within 4 weeks. So you might wait until 4 weeks to go get treatment, or if there's a significant symptom, or if there's a reason like an elite athlete that needs to get back to sport, then they could go to you could look into some of these things. A specialized concussion treatment center. More are popping up around the country as we learn more about how to treat these folks. You could go to a neurologist, a symptom-specific specialist like a neuro-ophthalmologist for eye issues, a physical therapist, a chiropractor for some of the, or a PT for some of the neck issues if things are out of alignment. That was one of the types of concussion. A brain trauma rehabilitation center, a neuropsychological evaluation. If they're under 3 years old, then the early intervention system. If they are 3 to 5, then it's the school district you go to. And if they are over 5 years old, they could be seen through the school, but you could do the school and private or one versus the other. Lots of ways to go, but the point is that there is so much more information and so many ways now that we can treat that we don't want anybody suffering long-term with concussion symptoms. We want to get them treated. We want people to know that there are things to do about concussion. So I hope that helps to teach you a little bit more. And again, stay tuned because there is more information coming out daily.